Coming up on this episode of Together for Good, why should you keep showing up for church? Why is church important at all? You won't believe it. I have some thoughts about this. Here we go. Welcome to the Together for Good podcast, a podcast created by Bethany Lutheran Church in Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, and hosted by me, Pastor Nate Preisinger. On Together for Good, our goal is to provide practical, engaging content that supports you without expectations. Whether you're feeling disconnected from traditional religion or simply exploring what faith means in your life, we're here to walk alongside you. No matter where you are on your journey of faith, we're glad you're here. Welcome to Together for Good. I want to answer the question of why would you ever think to still go to church? And there's actually a lot of components to this that I think are really important that people don't understand or don't talk about enough, I should say. And now let's just start with the basics though and admit that there are a lot of good reasons why people have stopped coming to church. People have been wronged by the church or hurt by the church or alienated by the church. They felt that because of who they are or who they loved, that they're not welcome at a church anymore. Those are all very respectful, good reasons for needing to move on from the community. And yet what I want you to know is that there are spiritual communities out there who can do a better job than what you've experienced before. That's one of the key pieces, is that I hope that because of a bad experience in one church, that it wouldn't shut you out from all churches altogether, because there are some communities out there that are doing an incredible job and that are really trying to change the narrative. We talk about the Christian church as if it's just this monolith and that every single one is exactly the same, proclaiming the same message, going through the same motions, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. And oftentimes, too, maybe you were wronged by a church in the past, but now that church has had a change in leadership. I'd encourage you to go back and to try it out again, because it's amazing at how a change in leadership can also completely shift the direction and the dynamics of a community. But I want to talk a little more high level just about what I think is important about a church community and why you should go back to church and give it another try if you've moved on. Again, wanting to at first be really respectful of the reasons you walked away, but also give us all some reasons to think about why it's important to show up on a weekly basis for worship, why it's important to be involved in a community of faith, and how that's good for our well-being. First and foremost, a church is one of the only intergenerational communities out there anymore. Think about it. Almost anywhere you go, you have people who are all of the same age gathered around. I'm guessing your place of work is probably about a 20-year range, right? It's a group of professionals who are professionals in their career. And so maybe the youngest person is in their 40s and the oldest person is nearing retirement at 65, right? Maybe a 30-year range. And if you're in school, okay, first off, if you're in school, I tell my kids this all the time. I know you might hate it, but it is one of the only times in your entire life where you will be around people your age all day long. You never get that again. Do you know how hard it is to find people who are your age to hang out with when you're an adult? Oh my gosh. But when you're in school, it's, here, let's get all the 11-year-olds in one room. I haven't been in a room with someone my same age in decades. It can be a lot of fun to be around people all your same age, but the church is this incredible intergenerational community. At any given Sunday morning, there are probably 6 generations in the pews, 6 different generations. And we talk about how generations have these personalities and different mindsets and different approaches. And we complain about the millennials all the time. Hello, I'm a millennial. I'm not going to start that generation war. That's a matter for another podcast. Your day is coming, baby boomers. But no, in church, you get to be around all these different generations. And that's really cool. To get to learn from the experiences of those older or younger than yourself. I know one of the ways we see this most evident is I hear from our older members how much they love seeing all the kids run forward for the children's sermon each week. They're likely in a retirement community, many of them. And so they are only around people of the older generation. And there's something about seeing the energy and the curiosity and the liveliness of children that just makes them feel more alive as well. But the flip side of that too, I have learned so much from the seasoned saints of my congregation. How's that for a nice term? Who have incredible life experience and amazing stories to tell about what it was like when they were growing up in the United States, or about their experiences in the military, fighting in different wars, or going to different schools. One of our members here at Bethany helped start one of our Christian camps, one of our Lutheran camps in Colorado. Hearing his stories about hiking up those hills the first time, it's just amazing. Intergenerational community is incredible, and you don't get it anywhere else but at church. I'm sure there's a couple outlier situations that I'm not thinking about, but in church is one of the very few places where consistently on a weekly basis, someone 3 years old and someone 93 years old are in the same room, and every generation in between those two is also present. That's a real gift and something important for our own livelihood and our own just understanding of the world. You can learn so much from people who are vastly older or vastly younger than you just by listening to their perspective. So there's just one of my first thoughts about why this whole church thing might matter. But obviously that's a pretty surface level piece of the puzzle. I want to get a little deeper and talk about the rhythms and the practices. We call it practicing our faith. And I think that phrasing is really important and appropriate. Practicing your faith suggests that you're never going to get it quite right, but it also suggests that there's something important about doing it again and again. One of my favorite press conferences of all time happened probably about 20 years ago now. Allen Iverson was the point guard for the Philadelphia 76ers. And he was being chastised because I guess he didn't go to practice very much. Now, at that point, he was the leading scorer in the league. He is so, if you've ever watched highlights, he's incredible. He's probably 5'11". He is so short, but he's incredibly quick, one of the best ball handlers you've ever seen. And he can score in any situation. He's a great shooter, but he also drives into the lane and gets it up over people who are over a foot taller than him. Anyways, he was being criticized for not practicing. And he goes on this rant where he says, what are you talking about? We're talking about practice here. We're not talking about the game where I give my life and my heart and my soul. We're talking about practice. And he just goes on and on. He repeats that. We're talking about practice 25 times in this 1 minute clip. That's not an exaggeration. It's hilarious. But Alan, yeah, we are talking about practice. His point was, why are you criticizing me for not practicing when it's so clear that I give my all during the game? And that's where it really matters. And I think for the life of faith, there's something instructive about Allen Iverson's words here, because we need to be able to rely on our faith during those really difficult moments of life. And notice how, you need to practice for the sake of the game, right? Allen's argument is, why are you criticizing me for not practicing? You know that I have what it takes when the game is on the line. But for us as people of faith, I think we need to practice our faith so that when the game happens, when those big moments of life knock us over, we have something to fall back on. We've practiced it enough that it's ingrained within us, that it's just a part of our being and who we are. I need to be careful here because I'm a really good Lutheran pastor and I don't want to be accused of works righteousness. That's not what I'm saying. Is we don't need to practice so that then we're good enough when the game's on the line. No, I'm just saying that by continually praying, by continually reading the scriptures, by continually going through the movements of the liturgy and the prayers of the liturgy, all of this sets us up and ingrains within our very being this sense of faith that can then be relied upon during those difficult moments. We practice our faith for the times when the going gets tough. Showing up on Sunday morning, yeah, it's a practice. And the reason I'm harping on this is because I've experienced this myself recently. I mentioned this in a podcast, but I'll tell the story again. I went home to New York for 3 weeks in order to be with my mother as she went onto hospice care. And while I was there, yeah, it was really a very emotionally heavy period of time. And I remember Mom had just gone on to hospice on a Tuesday. My dad had a whole medical episode of his own. He went into the hospital on a Thursday. And so when Sunday morning rolled around, I was feeling rough around the edges. And my older sister was in town. And so I told my sister, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to church this morning. Is that all right? She's like, absolutely. So I went to the church where I grew up. Shout out Good Shepherd Lutheran in Glenville, New York. And I pulled in 5 minutes late, as was our family custom growing up. And I snuck in and sat in one of the pews in the back. And I'll admit the music wasn't great. And the sermon wasn't great either. And the whole service was so comforting to me. Part of it was just being in that space where I grew up, where I remembered sitting next to my mom in the pews, showing up 5 minutes late Sunday after Sunday. But also some of it was the words that we said that haven't changed in thousands of years. Those little parts of the liturgy that were written in our scriptures and that have been continually been carried forward as pieces we say together week after week in Christian churches throughout the world. Yeah, it was all so comforting. And it's a good reminder for me as a pastor that maybe sometimes I'm worrying too much about all of the little pieces and making it just perfect, but also a good reminder that God's up to something bigger and more. As we go through the motions, so to speak, there's still a way that the Spirit is moving within us through the rhythms of liturgy, through the practices of our faith, through the singing of hymns, the passing of the peace, the sharing in bread and wine at communion. These are all these rituals that are so much bigger than just the individual moment where we go through the motions. And so I know there's some weeks where you might go to church and you feel nothing. I get it. And I'm guessing that you had a whole bunch of weeks in a row like that may have led you to then just being like, I don't really need this anymore. This isn't doing anything for me. And I'd urge you to reconsider and to wonder how showing up, even when you don't feel it, might be doing something deeper for you that you'll need later on in life when things are really hard. All right, putting that aside, I mentioned singing there as one of the practices, and that's another piece that I just want to talk about. This is one of my little fun teaching moments that I just think is so cool to recognize. Singing builds community. It's why people join choirs, right? There's something special if you've ever been in a choir about singing with other people, especially when you're doing some really good performative music that can be so fun. It's the same as playing in a band or something like that. Just creating music with other human beings is a deeply, oh my gosh, just a nourishing experience for your soul. But specifically about singing in community, this is another thing like intergenerational community that doesn't happen anywhere else. I heard it said recently, there's 3 places where people sing together. Take me out to the ball game during the 7th inning stretch. Birthday parties when we all sing happy birthday. And church. The one the person forgot, you got to add concerts. If you've ever been to a good concert where everyone's singing along, you know what I'm talking about. It is ethereal. It's next level. But that can happen at church too. And I know maybe you're thinking these ancient hymns. No. Hymns were created and written in such a way to be singable by community. Additionally, I would encourage you, sometimes when you're singing the hymns, you're paying so much attention to all the stuff that's going on that you're not reading or understanding the words. Go back after, right? During my sermon, you have my permission. Don't listen to the sermon. Read the words to the hymn. The theology and the care of the words that are chosen in many of our hymns is unbelievable. I have found it so powerful to read through hymns as forms of prayer. Oftentimes in communal settings, I've gotten such good feedback on this, where I'll end my sermon by reading the first stanza of the hymn we're about to sing, and it will manage to say in 30 words so much better anything that I had been able to articulate in the sermon that preceded that hymn. But we often miss it because we're just singing and we're thinking about all these other pieces and not noticing the words. But here's why singing itself is beautiful. One of the things that happens when you sing together is you are forced to breathe together, because there are just logical places within the music where it makes sense for us all to take a breath. You've got this congregation here at Bethany. There's about 400 people in the pews every Sundays. And so you have 400 people all inhaling at the exact same time. And another funny thing happens when you breathe together with other human beings. Your hearts start to beat in the same rhythms as everyone else around you. Singing is this deeply forming communal experience because we are breathing together and our hearts are beating together. You can begin to understand when you are singing beautiful words of deep theological significance and your hearts and your breaths are all aligned, what that can do to a group of people. Why wouldn't you choose to participate in something this beautiful? And that's really more to the point as well, is that what our hearts are aligning with, what we're singing about, is the reality of a loving and caring God who forgives us, who is with us in the depths and the darkness of human life, and who has a hope and a plan, not only for us, but for all of creation. This is what we're aligning our breath and our hearts with when we sing. When I put it like that, don't you just want to go to church right now? Maybe not. It's so beautiful. It's why I do what I do, because I just can't believe that something this incredible exists, and that even me, I admit, right? There are many weeks where I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to show up. I have the luxury of having a professional obligation to have to be here, which forces me to participate. And I'm always so glad that I did. And in the same sense, I get that there's many Sundays where you just want to sleep in or watch Meet the Press. Gosh, Meet the Press is so good. I haven't seen Meet the Press in years. I get it. Or go skiing or do something else. But you're missing out. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but I'm just trying to help us see this incredible thing called corporate worship that churches offer for free every single Sunday. And what a beautiful piece it is. And that's really to my final point on all of this, is that church is helping us sing a better song and tell a better story than what we get the rest of the week. I've talked about this in recent podcasts too, about how our world is always trying to sell us something, and our jobs are always demanding and issuing our value based on what we produce. And church tells a message that's the complete flip and opposite of that. And that's so healing and brings such a sense of peace to us that we need to be exposed to on a regular basis, because it's so easy to forget, right? You head out into the week and immediately you're cursing at the person who cut you off, and you're worried about not having enough money, and you see the billboard and you want to be thinner, and you'll get this email from your job and you want to get more work done, and you wish you could produce more, but you just don't feel up to it, right? Like, it's just this immense, relentless message of worthlessness that seems to just pervade what it means to do life in 2025. And church, it should be offering you something different than that, a hopeful message, and a message that says that you have value because God says so, because God is gracious and merciful and created you out of love so that you could then be a loving individual for the sake of the world and others. And I think this is what church is trying to train us into doing, is to be exposed week after week to the ancient sacred stories of the scriptures that tell us about a loving and gracious God who wants nothing more than for each of us to be the person that God created us to be. Full stop, as my seminary professor would say. This message of grace is a much better song than what the rest of the world has to give us. It runs completely counter to the do and achieve and optimize and succeed message that pervades everything else we have to deal with. That's another reason, is to just hear again that you're loved and that you have value, to participate again in these rituals that help ingrain this message within you in real, tangible, physical ways. This is Christ's body given for you. This is Christ's blood shed for you. That message speaks about a God who will give everything for your sake, not because you're good enough or because you met the quota, but because you have value just as you are. This is what we need. These are a whole bunch of beautiful reasons that I hope you found compelling. I love talking about this because I'm so passionate that the church still has something important and sacred to share with the world. So yeah, I hope to see you in church on Sunday. And again, this isn't meant to shame or guilt trip anyone, but again, just to share this beautiful story, these beautiful practices, the significant thing that happens every single week in a congregation near you. I hope that gives you some things to think about. Thanks as always for listening. Stay in peace, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Together for Good podcast. If you'd like more resources for your walk of faith, please visit our website, bethany-denver.org, or download our mobile app by searching Bethany Connect in your phone's app store.